was out of the house at 14, 15 years old. And I graduated high school early, 17 and a half years old. And I still had a relationship with my family. Every holiday we were together. Birthdays, we were together. I had my own place at 17 years old. Graduated high school at 17 years old, started college immediately. As a matter of fact, I believe I was taking college credit courses in high school through Naperville, possibly. But I never stopped working and working hard, my entire life. Had my first job at 15 or 14 years old with a work permit because I was so young that I could not work without one. And so you consider the fact that my brother, not by chance, not by surprise, was able to get into college. And I'm very, very proud of him. My brother has put in a tremendous amount of work. My daughter is always in my care with her brother and sister. And now I have a fourth child, but my daughter's life looks like this. The paradigm is this. She was with me. Okay. And I was separated from her father. She was with me, her brother, and her sister in our home. I was a single income parent, and I was not earning what my mother was earning as a corporate, leader. I was earning most of the time a little above minimum wage. And I was a medical administrator at Northwestern Hospital, as well as several private physicians' offices in Alexian Brothers in Northern Illinois. I worked for Dr. Parag Doshi, Dr. Smith, Dr. Aronson, Dr. Carly Scammer, Dr. Linda Maletti, Dr. Susan Burke, Dr. Walter Stoller, and many, many other doctors. Okay, Dr. Najum, Dr. Lewis, eye doctors doing optical sales. But I was a single income household most of that time. And I never collected child support because my belief system was the kids are with me 4 or 5 days a week. They're with you 3 or 4 days a week. You buy the clothes they need at your house. You buy the food they need at your house. You take them to do activities while they're with you. And I'll do the same while they're with me. That was close enough to 50% as it gets, in my opinion. We'll split school supplies. We'll split, all of those things. So my children got me and my attention, whatever I could give, after I got off of work from giving a company 11 to 14 hours of my time and energy in exchange for approximately $19 to $20 an hour, which in early 2006 and 5 and 4 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 was substantial. It was about double the minimum wage in those years. Now, can you imagine what type of energy and attention the quality of the energy and attention that I would be able to provide to my children when I would get home from work at the end of the day? Not the same probably as my stepfather was able to give my brother when he would go pick up my brother from school and take him to sports or do things of this nature. Also different than my mother would be able to give to my brother when she would get out of a 12-day work day or 12-hour work day or 14-hour work day or just get home from a 5-day business trip, right? So being that my brother had the privilege of having 2 parents in the household who were able to give him varying degrees of time, attention, and effort each day, and my daughter and my children were only able to get a smaller percentage of my time, energy, effort, and attention based on whatever I could give after my day of work. It is no surprise that when one of my children, specifically math has been proven to be a problem, is struggling with this topic, with this course, and considering colleges and things of that nature, that's not even in the immediate forefront of our conversation. What college do you want to apply to? We're thinking, how are we going to get through math this semester? And my children are exposed to problems like legal struggles, poverty struggles, i.e. shutoffs on electric, the threat of having, our security system in our home shut off, shutoffs with cable, shutoffs with phone bills, shutoffs with water, shutoffs with, and granted, I was one of those parents who, while my children lived with me full time, 90% of the time, I didn't have those issues. They were threats because it was very possible that they could happen at any time, and they did happen once or twice at least. But 90% of the time, I was, grateful enough to be able to keep all of those things on. Understand that I'm using my situation, my family, and my loved ones to paint a vivid picture of America for those of you who have the privilege of not understanding. We are not the only ones. And I'm at the top of a long, long descending demographic of people living in poverty who have become so accustomed to not knowing if their electric will be paid the next month, don't even consider it a source of anxiety or a point of anxiety anymore. I never got there, luckily. For me, it was a source of anxiety, and my bills remain a source of anxiety every month. But there are people who are living in such poverty that not paying their bill doesn't even bother them anymore. It's not that it doesn't bother them. It's that their bodies, as a naturally evolving body, and their minds that naturally evolved to protect ourselves, have gotten to the point where they can't freak out about it anymore, because the negative and traumatic, everlasting effects of that stress, their bodies create natural coping mechanisms to just not care. And it appears to you or I outwardly, without the information that I'm presenting, that they don't care and that they're careless. But that's not at all the truth. The truth is, of course, they want to have their electric on. Of course, they want to be living with necessities that you and I take for granted each day. Of course, they want to be able to choose their own meals and cook for themselves. Of course, they want to get in their car rather than board the bus. Of course, of course, of course. But for someone who's never known that struggle, for someone whose body, mind, and soul is not evolved to the point where they are protected from those anxieties because it's become expected to not have, there's a lot of judgment from the people who haven't developed that form of protection. So there is no surprise about the struggles that a child who only has a small amount of energy, time. I'm not going to say love, because my children have always gotten all of my love. There's no doubt in their minds that I love them. But as a child of a father and mother who could not financially provide to me, and I'll get more into that as well, because of their other obligations and, you know, where their money was going, I know how it feels. The correlation between not having finance from your parents when you need it and knowing they love you, they overlap, whether we want them to or not. So in my calm mind, I know my parents love me, and I know that if they could, they would. But knowing that they can't, and so they don't, it does affect us. You know, and I'm not so naive to think that my perspective is unique. I know for a fact that my children, of course, have gotten frustrated if they've needed money from me and I've not been able to give it to them. In their calm, rational mind, do they know mom loves them? Yeah. But then that stems a whole million other questions as to why us? You know, why couldn't we be born to a parent with money? Or why does my mom have to go through this? And it's not one way in perspective. It's not poor me, poor me. It's poor my mom. It's poor my family. It's poor me, poor my mom, poor my family. And then once you evolve past that mindset, it's we're fine. We're fine. And then you harden. And this is the natural progression of living in poverty, living in lack. And so I continue to pose, you know, the perspective that when we're sitting around blaming, and I believe that it is a tremendous amount of the middle class, rich people, I'm pretty sure, don't live in privilege. Rich people know the struggles that poor people face. I believe that they do, because a lot of them, you know, have lived that. But the middle class is in a tremendous amount of ignorant bliss. And the trade-off for that is that they work really hard, and their realities of financial success, they're very different than the realities of the other two classes, those living in poverty and those who are wealthy. There's a tremendous amount of responsibility that's shouldered on the middle class that they don't even know they carry, and some that they do know they carry. And at the end of the day, all of these neural networks and all of these augmented realities and tools that we have, they're only as effective as we allow them to be. If we're not putting forth effort into solving the right problems, then the right problems cannot be solved. So when I say things like universal income, or at the very least, universal basic income, my idea for resolving all the problems of the world is that we have no limits on ATM withdrawals, and they all come from one bank. One bank. All of the money is housed in one central facility, and it's digital. It's not dollar paper money. And when you need money for something, you go to the ATM and you request that amount of money, and that money is given to you instantly. And you go and make your purchase for whatever it is you need. And when we train people to live this way, they will not hoard. They will not purchase in excess, because they will understand that whatever it is they need, they can attain. By forcing people to live in poverty where they can't get what they need, they cannot reach their needs, we're not making the best use, in my opinion, as someone who has lived in this extreme poverty, we're not making the best use of these advancements and technological knowledge that we have. No one, in my opinion, should have to live in poverty. No one's children should have to suffer. You know, no one. So I think it's really a worthwhile discussion to take away control from these kids who think that they're doing, I'm going to refer to it, for lack of better wording, as clinical research. If your clinical research is being conducted in a way that is harming your subject, that is more harmful and destructive to your subject than it is anything else, then you need to find another way. We stopped and we protested and we did all of this with regards to testing on animals and with regards to, ethical and cruelty-free things for makeup production and things of that nature. So if we can put forth such an effort in, not allowing makeup conducted in a way that is harming your subject, that is more harmful and destructive to your subject than it is anything else, then you need to find another way. We stopped and we protested and we did all of this with regards to testing on animals and with regards to, ethical and cruelty-free things for makeup production and things of that nature. So if we can put forth such an effort in, not allowing makeup to be tested on animals, then I believe we need to, at the very least, put forth the same amount of effort and attention into prevention of testing on human subjects. And clinical studies should be, completed in a way that does not interfere with outcome. When we're talking about clinical studies being conducted that change the path of a person's entire life, that is not a natural outcome. That is not a clinical study. That is a manipulation of reality. Now, I also understand that if you zoom out your lens a little bit more and you're a believer of the butterfly effect or everything that's supposed to happen happens, or there are no coincidences, philosophies like that are much broader and more philosophical than they are, physics centered, that you might think, well, it was supposed to happen that way. The clinical interference was leading them to their intended, outcome. But with all of this, in mind, and all of this being said, we live in 2024. We carry one or more electronic devices with us at all times. Most of us. It should be all of us, or have access to. No one should be living in an oppressed state. There's no one. This is not a matter of opinion. This is a matter of fact. We have the ability to give every single person enough without running out. So what is the problem? And then it leads your mind to, okay, if we're talking about having enough for all, but we're doing things to not allow all to have enough, who and why is doing that? And when there is no direct communication, or there is no one person, I have all these questions and I can't pick up the phone and say, I know exactly who to call for this. Boop, 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 boop. Yes, I'd like to know why the American people are not receiving universal basic income. You ponder, and most certainly that pondering grows incredibly intense and incredibly deep when you're seeing people who you know and love being affected by the lack of action. I do believe that that's the reason why it's been able to go on for so long, because the world traditionally, prior to these advancements in communication and technology, have been so separated. Segregation was not just a thing off, based on race. It was very much a thing based off of socioeconomic class. You wouldn't see a person who was worth a couple billion at the same grocery store that you would see, a poor person begging outside for change. There was intentional segregation of those classes. And there still is now more than ever. But communication and technology has given us a platform to reach the unreachable, to be heard by those who traditionally would be protected from hearing from us. So how do I reach who I need to reach so that I can say, hey, here are my skills. These are my skill sets. This is what I value them at. How do I get an ROI for everything that I've invested in my journey, specifically for the purpose of creating a fruitful, stable, loving, supportive environment in life for my children and for yours? If you do believe in those butterfly effects and things of that nature, you understand most certainly that as we procreate, the life that we're leaving for our generation's offspring is completely contingent upon our efforts, both individually and as a collective, as a whole. I go to church on Sundays and I pray to God every single Sunday. And most of the days during the week, please, God, please put me in a position me to have a home, a physical home. Yes, you know, I have theoretical custody of my children. In the eyes of the law, on pieces of paper, I am the custodial parent. But if I'm living in poverty and I cannot provide for my children, I cannot have physical custody of them. I cannot hold them. I cannot, you know, kiss them. I cannot hug them. So I ask God over and over, in the mindset of abundance and in the mindset of there are no limits on what we can earn and what we can create and what we can do and the things we can experience and the things we can provide for each other and for our children and for our offspring. Having that mindset that I have, how do I turn that into something practical that is profitable so that I can, for myself, live in freedom and have the freedom to make a purchase, real estate, for example, or a vehicle, even something as basic as like a timeshare, so that I can have a safe place that is mine for that period of time to be with my children in that space. That space is what I am craving, whether it is, as I said, a rental or something that I own, that space. And then once you get that space, you need, let's create the neural network for it. So first thing is you need the space. Then once you have the space, what else do you need to create an environment that's nurturing and loving? And you need energy. You need the energy to do so. You can't be so overworked and exhausted that you don't have the energy and patience that you need to be there, to really show up. You need money. You need money so that you can do things other than just sitting in a circle staring at each other, right? And having surface level conversation or even deep conversation. There's only so much of that you could do before your energy depletes, right? So when we're constantly pouring out of the bucket of resources, we need something to fill it back up. And my question continues and remains, and always has been, following all of these steps that I've taken, and there's this invisible, you know, force field around me that's not allowing me to get through it. What do I have to do to break that force field down so that I can give myself and my children that space, that opportunity, that lifestyle that we all seek, that stability that we all crave, the love, the happiness, the things of those nature. And the last thing I'm going to say before I hop off of here for now is that, you know, if we don't do something about this now, it's intentional, because maybe before the excuse remained that it was very boxed in and hush hush. And, you know, in the olden days, the newspaper was the primary form of communication. So it would be realistic to say that a whole entire, you know, environment that grows up in the Midwest has no idea what's going on in the South, right? Especially in the days before phones. How would you hear? It was still possible to find out, but it would have to be like, oh, my cousin went down south and she's coming back next week and she's going to tell me. And then the news she would deliver would be from her limited scope of perspective of reality, from what she saw and experienced on that trip down south. The internet allows us to say what is going on in Texas from Chicago and click on Texas news. And then you can get a plethora of major media outlets, your standard 579, Fox, NBC, ABC, you know, NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, what else? WGN. They have those everywhere pretty much, right? You could get those. And then you could take it a step further and you could go on your social media and say 60611, zip code, enter. And you could get people and their individual perspectives from, you know, that area. So now you've got reputable sources at your fingertips within less than a second from those places, from the news places. Those are all reputable. Oh, my daughter's calling. I'll have to finish this later. Hi, babe. Alexis? Hello?